My brother's wife brought me soup while I was recovering from surgery. After a few sips, I felt my body get weak and pretended to faint. I heard her say on the phone, "We just need her out of the way, the house will be ours." I waited until she left before calling the police. Her reaction was priceless when they showed up. This all started when I had surgery a few months ago. It wasn't life-threatening, but it was serious enough that I needed a few weeks to fully recover. I live alone in a house my parents left me after they passed. It's a nice place, not a mansion, but comfortable, fully paid off, and in a great neighborhood in Seattle. My younger brother, Daniel, and his wife, Sophia, weren't as lucky. They rented a small apartment, constantly complained about money, and, more than once, hinted at how unfair it was that I got the house. I never thought much of it. Families say things, right? Siblings argue. People get jealous. I assumed they'd get over it. I was wrong. After my surgery, I wasn't in great shape. The pain meds made me groggy, moving around was hard, and I had to rely on people to help with basic things. Daniel and Sophia offered to help me recover. At first, I was grateful. Daniel was my brother, and Sophia had always been polite, even if she sometimes made weird comments about my house. The first few days were fine. Sophia brought groceries, cleaned up a little, and made meals. Daniel mostly stayed out of the way, which wasn't unusual. I figured he just didn't want to deal with the whole caretaker thing. Then Sophia started making comments. "You must be so lonely in this big house. Have you ever thought about moving somewhere smaller? It would be nice to have a family living here, don't you think?" At first, I thought she was just making conversation. Then I started noticing little things. She began rearranging furniture. I'd wake up from a nap and suddenly, things would be in different places, like she was making the house hers. One day, I overheard her talking to Daniel about where they would put the crib if they had kids. I should have confronted them right then, but I was exhausted and figured they were just daydreaming. I should have known better. Then came the soup. It was the middle of the afternoon. I was resting in bed when Sophia came in with a bowl of homemade soup. She was weirdly insistent that I eat it right away. "I made it just for you. It's my grandmother's recipe. It'll help you heal faster." I wasn't hungry, but she sat there, watching me, waiting for me to take a sip. So, I did. It tasted fine, but within minutes, I started feeling off. My limbs felt heavy. My vision blurred at the edges. My head was spinning, but not in the way it did with my pain meds. This was something else. Something was wrong. Panic set in, but I forced myself to stay calm. My instincts kicked in, and I did the only thing I could think of. I let the spoon drop from my hand, slumped back into my pillows, and let my eyes roll shut. I pretended to pass out. And that's when I heard her. Sophia let out a long sigh, like she was relieved. I could barely keep my breathing steady as she pulled out her phone and dialed someone. She drank it. "Yeah. We just need her out of the way. The house will be ours." My stomach dropped. My heart pounded in my chest. This wasn't some misunderstanding. This wasn't a weird joke. This was real. I wanted to scream. I wanted to jump up and demand answers. But I couldn't. If I let her know I was awake, I didn't know what she'd do. I lay there, forcing myself to stay still as she walked around my room, probably checking if I was fully unconscious. Then, just as casually as if she were leaving for the grocery store, she grabbed her purse and walked out the front door. The second I heard the door click shut, I moved. I didn't know how long I had before she came back, but I wasn't taking any chances. My body was sluggish, but I pushed through it, forcing myself to roll over and reach for my phone on the nightstand. It felt like my limbs were made of lead, but I managed to grab it and dialed 911. The operator picked up almost immediately. My sister-in-law poisoned me. I need help. I told them my address, that I was feeling weak, that I was alone in the house. The operator told me to stay on the line, but I barely heard them. My head was spinning, my vision still blurred, but I forced myself to focus. Minutes felt like hours. Then, finally, I heard the wail of sirens outside. The paramedics got to me first, helping me sit up, checking my vitals. One of them took the bowl of soup for testing. Then the police came in. That's when Sophia walked back through the front door. Her face went pale. There I was, sitting up in bed, surrounded by paramedics and cops. She froze. For the first time since I'd known her, she was speechless. "Officer, are you Sophia, last name?" She blinked. What's going on?" I could see her mind racing, trying to come up with a believable excuse. She actually tried to laugh. "Oh my gosh, did she call 911? I just went to the car for a second. What's happening?" The officers weren't buying it. They took her in for questioning. I went to the hospital. The tests confirmed it. There was a sedative in my system. Enough to knock me out for hours. But the real kicker? When the police checked my call records, they found my recorded 911 call, the part where Sophia told someone, "We just need her out of the way, the house will be ours." Then they checked her text messages. Turns out, she had been texting Daniel the whole time. Sophia, she drank it. She should be out soon. Start thinking about how we'll renovate the guest room. Daniel, okay, just don't mess it up. My own brother. He wasn't just aware of it. He was in on it. And now? Now they were both in handcuffs. But this wasn't over. Not yet. I sat in the hospital bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of it all. Daniel. My own brother. Sophia was evil, I saw that now. But Daniel? He was my blood. The boy I grew up with. The kid who used to protect me from bullies. How could he betray me like this? The police weren't sure yet if they had enough to charge him, but Sophia was in serious trouble. The sedative, the 911 recording, the texts, it was bad for her. They took her phone as evidence and were checking for more messages, more proof. I should have felt relieved. But something was wrong. Daniel wasn't calling me. He wasn't texting. He wasn't even trying to defend himself. That's when I realized he was too calm. He knew something I didn't. 3 days later, I was released from the hospital. The police told me to stay somewhere safe, at least until the investigation was over. I agreed, but deep down, I knew I couldn't leave my house unguarded. Something told me Sophia and Daniel weren't done with me yet. That night, I set up cameras around my house. I wasn't tech-savvy, but I wasn't stupid either. I placed motion detectors by the doors and windows, making sure I'd get an alert if anyone tried to sneak in. I was right to be cautious. At 2:43 a.m., my phone buzzed. Motion detected. Back door. My heart slammed against my ribs. I checked the live camera feed and felt my stomach drop. Daniel. He was outside, looking around, checking the locks. Then he pulled something out of his jacket, a key. My key. I had changed the locks after Sophia was arrested. Which meant Daniel had a copy made before all this even happened. I barely had time to process that before he slid the key in and turned the knob. I grabbed my phone, heart racing. Me, 911, my brother is breaking into my house. I whispered the address, barely breathing as I watched Daniel step inside. He moved fast, like he knew exactly what he was looking for. He went straight to the hallway closet and pulled out a box. One of the few things left for my parents. My parents' will was in that box. My stomach twisted. Daniel didn't just want the house. He wanted to destroy the proof that it was mine. I heard the sirens before he did. When the flashing red and blue lights filled the living room, Daniel froze. He turned toward the door just as the officers stormed in, weapons drawn. Hands up. His eyes locked on mine. For the first time since this all started, I saw it, the panic, the realization that he had lost. I stepped forward, voice shaking. Me. You were never going to stop, were you? Daniel didn't answer. They cuffed him, led him outside, and just like that, my own brother was arrested in my house. But I knew it wasn't over. Not yet. The next morning, I met with the detective handling my case. He told me something that made my blood run cold. They had searched Sophia's phone and found a hidden bank account, one with over $250,000 in it. Money that wasn't hers. Do you recognize these transactions? The detective asked, sliding me a list of withdrawals. I skimmed through it. And then I saw it. A withdrawal from my parents' old savings account. My stomach dropped. That account should have been closed years ago, after their estate was settled. There was no way money should still be moving out of it. Unless someone had kept it open. Someone who had access to the financial records. Someone who had been living with my parents when they were sick. Someone like Daniel. I gripped the edge of the desk. Me. He's been stealing from me this whole time, hasn't he? The detective nodded. It looks that way. I felt sick. All these years, while I thought Daniel was struggling, while he and Sophia cried about bills, while they guilt me for keeping the house, they had been taking money from me behind my back. They had planned this for a long time. And now, the police had enough to go after both of them. But before I could even process all of that, the detective hit me with another bombshell. Something else is missing, he said, flipping through a folder. Do you have the original copy of your parents' will? I frowned. Yeah, it's in my safe. Then I stopped. Daniel had gone straight for that box when he broke in. My hands shook as I pulled out my phone and checked the house cameras again. The footage from last night, Daniel breaking in, grabbing the box, taking something out of it. A single piece of paper. My chest tightened. He had taken the will. It hit me like a brick. Daniel wasn't just trying to steal money. He was trying to erase proof that the house was mine. If the original will was gone, they could challenge the estate. Claim there was never proof that I owned the house. Tie it up in legal battles for years. I gritted my teeth. Sophia may have failed to get rid of me. But Daniel? He was still playing the long game. And I was not going to let him win. I barely slept that night. My mind kept replaying the footage of Daniel breaking in, stealing that document. The will was gone, and I had no idea what he was planning. By morning, my phone was flooded with missed calls from Daniel's lawyer. I didn't answer. Instead, I called the detective. Me. Daniel stole my parents' will. I think he's trying to fake something. The detective told me to come in immediately. When I got there, he had a grim expression. He handed me a folder. Inside was a new will, one that had just surfaced from an unknown source. A will that left everything to Daniel and Sophia. My hands clenched. This is fake. The detective nodded. We thought so, too. But here's the problem, it looks real. It's been notarized. Signed. Dated. On the surface, it matches legal records. If this goes to court, it could be a mess. I stared at the document. They had planned this from the start. They had faked an entire will to make it look like my parents wanted them to have the house. And since they stole the real one, there was no immediate proof that it was a fraud. I felt sick. Daniel wasn't just greedy. He was smart. And if I didn't do something fast, I could lose everything. There was one problem with Daniel's plan. If he had faked the will, he had to have someone forge the signatures. The detective started digging. We checked Daniel's bank transactions, looking for large cash withdrawals, something that could be a payment to a forger. And then we found it. 3 weeks ago, Daniel withdrew $10,000 in cash. A few days later, a known document forger was arrested in town. We looked into the guy, and sure enough, he had connections to Daniel's lawyer. That was enough for the police to start digging deeper. They compared the handwriting. It didn't match my parents'. They checked the notary stamp. It was a fake. The entire document was fraudulent. But Daniel didn't know that we knew. And I was about to turn the tables on him. I needed to make Daniel feel safe, make him believe his fake will was working. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I called him. Me, I don't want to fight anymore. I forced my voice to sound tired. Defeated. Like I had given up. Daniel hesitated. So, you're not contesting the will? I sighed. If that's what Mom and Dad wanted, I won't fight it. There was a pause. Then he laughed. Laughed like he had won. Daniel, you're making the right choice. The rage in my chest burned like fire, but I swallowed it down. I told him I was ready to meet and sign over the house. That we should do it in person at his lawyer's office. He agreed. And just like that, the trap was set. I showed up at the lawyer's office the next morning. Daniel was already there, sitting across from his attorney, looking smug. Sophia wasn't there, she was still dealing with her own legal trouble. Daniel pushed a contract toward me. Daniel, just sign this and we can put this all behind us. I took the pen. Paused. Looked at him. Me. You sure this is what you want? Daniel smirked. Of course. And then, the door burst open. 2 officers walked in. Detective, Daniel, last name, you're under arrest for fraud, forgery, and attempted theft. Daniel's entire face drained of color. Daniel, W what? The detective threw his fake will onto the table. Detective, this document is a fraud. We have the forger in custody. We have your financial records. We have everything. Daniel's hands shook. His mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. I leaned in. Me, did you really think I wouldn't fight back? The officers cuffed him, reading his rights as they dragged him out. I watched my own brother get taken away in handcuffs. But I knew this wasn't over yet. Because Sophia was still out there. And I had a feeling she wasn't done playing dirty. Daniel's arrest should have been the end of it. But I knew better. Sophia was still out there. And if there was one thing I had learned, it was that she didn't give up easily. 2 days after Daniel was taken into custody, I got a call from the detective. Detective, we found something else. They had gone through Sophia's phone records. And they found her lawyer's number. She wasn't sitting quietly. She was fighting back. That night, I was home alone when my phone buzzed. An unknown number. I answered. Sophia, you ruined everything. Her voice was cold. Furious. I kept my own voice steady. I didn't ruin anything. You did. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. Sophia, you think this is over? You think you've won? A chill ran down my spine. I took a deep breath. You and Daniel tried to steal from me. You lied, you forged documents, and now he's in jail. You're next. Silence. Then, Sophia, you don't understand. Daniel didn't plan this. I did. My heart stopped. I gripped the phone tighter. What? Sophia, you think your brother was smart enough to pull this off? You think he planned the fake will? The hidden bank account? The break-in? My breath caught. Sophia, no, sweetheart. That was all me. I felt sick. Daniel had betrayed me, yes. But Sophia, she was the mastermind. And she wasn't done yet. The day of Daniel's trial arrived faster than I expected. I sat in the courtroom, hands clenched in my lap, as they brought Daniel in. He looked thinner, exhausted. His lawyer whispered to him, but his eyes never left me. Then the doors swung open. Sophia walked in. She was dressed like a widow at a funeral, black dress, dark sunglasses, the picture of a suffering wife. But I saw the smirk she tried to hide. She thought she still had control. She was wrong. The prosecution laid everything out, the fake will, the stolen money, the poisoning attempt. They played Sophia's phone calls, her texts, her search history on how to forge legal documents. Then came the final piece of evidence. A recording of Sophia talking to her lawyer, one she didn't know had been intercepted. Daniel is weak. He'll take the fall for this. That was the plan all along. The courtroom exploded. Daniel's face twisted in horror. The judge called for order. But I didn't look at him. I looked at Sophia. For the first time, her confidence cracked. She wasn't expecting this. She thought she had manipulated everyone, including Daniel. But she had been caught in her own web. Daniel shot to his feet, rage pouring out of him. Daniel, you set me up? Sophia didn't answer. She didn't even look at him. Daniel, I lost everything because of you. His voice broke. For a second, I saw my little brother, the kid who used to follow me around, who wanted to be just like me. And now, he was broken. Sophia finally turned to him, her expression ice cold. Sophia, I told you to be smarter. Daniel's lawyer yanked him back down, whispering in his ear. He slumped in his seat, realization dawning on his face. Sophia had used him. And now, he was going to prison for her mistakes. The jury didn't take long. Daniel was sentenced to 7 years for fraud, breaking and entering, and theft. Sophia? 15 years. The poisoning attempt sealed her fate. As the guards led her away, she turned to me one last time. Sophia, I almost won. I met her gaze and smiled. Me, almost. Then she was gone. Daniel refused to look at me as they took him away. I didn't chase after him. I thought I would feel victorious. That I would feel safe again. Instead, all I felt was empty. He had done terrible things. He had hurt me, betrayed me, and nearly ruined my life. But he was still my brother. And now, he was gone. Months passed. The house felt quiet without all the chaos. I changed my locks again. I got new security cameras, updated my will, and made sure no one could ever pull this on me again. One afternoon, I got a letter from Daniel. It was short. I was stupid. I see that now. I don't expect forgiveness, but I needed to say it. I stared at it for a long time before putting it away. I didn't know if I would ever write back. Maybe one day. Maybe never. But I did know one thing. I was finally free.